Welcome, everyone. We are so grateful that you joined us this Sunday morning. I'm excited to share the theme for today. We're going to be reflecting and exploring this idea of being gathered in and to commitment. On the one hand, as individuals, we can expect a certain commitment from the community, right? That we are truly welcome, beloved, that we have a freedom to be ourselves and to show up and be accepted. And on the other hand, what does it mean for individuals to commit to the community as a whole? In our own personal lives, but also here at church, how do we be a people of God who are committed to one another's journeys as we collectively seek out God's will and live out values? So once again, welcome, and let us worship.
This next song is called In Memoriam by the Oh Hellos, and this song is all about grace. Every day, God chooses us, and that is quite the commitment, if you ask me, and all we need to do is to show up as we are and choose God back.
It's a long way out to reach the sea, but I'm sure I'll find you waiting there for me. And by the time I blink, I'll see you, wild arms swinging just above me in the middle of the road. And you'll hold me like you'll never let me go. And beside the salty water, I could hold you close, but you are far too beautiful to love me. It's a long climb up the dusty mountain to build a turret tall enough to keep you out. But when you wage your wars against the one who adores you, never know the treasure that you're worth. But I've never been a wealthy one before. I got holes in my pocket burned by liar's gold. I think I'm far too poor for you to leave. It's been a long road losing all I've owned, and you don't know what you got to your bone. And it's a nasty habit spending all you have, all the leaving, then it's never your love lost. And if you for the start, then there was never love at all. And heaven knows I'm prone to leave the only God I should have loved, and yet you're far too beautiful to leave me.
Well, as we gather together in this space, let's all just take a breath. Wherever you are, will you breathe in with me? Let's do it again. The Hebrew word for the Holy Spirit is ruah, which means breath. That's why every Sunday when we gather, we want to begin in that space of breath and of life, helping to ground ourselves in this space, to set aside just, a little bit of time for us to just pause and reflect. So as we do that, I'm going to light this candle and let us breathe together, inviting the Spirit and inviting ourselves to listen anew to what it means to be gathered in and to community as we are this morning. Will you pray with me? God of breath, breathe in us, that as we breathe deeply, we might connect with the parts of our brains that remind us that we all, throughout this entire world, are your children, and that all of creation is alive. Meet us this morning in this light and in this breath. Amen. Our theme for today is gathered in and to community. Sometimes when I think about the sense of covenant, which is what as a congregational church we mean when we talk about community, we are a gathered people who we don't come together because we all think the same things or because we have to sign the dotted line to give away our firstborn children. No, we come together as a people who say we want to do life together. We want to journey together with God and with one another. Now, the reality is, as many of you have actually known and as I've known in my own story, that sometimes when we gather together for community, it's been a really painful thing and a painful place where you're supposed to shut your mind off. Don't ask any questions. Don't be too much of a problem, because if we're going to be in community, we better all be easy to get along with and better say, whatever Jeff Lindsay says is absolutely the right thing all of the time, of course, right? I hear Jeff saying amen somewhere. But that's not it. When we say we gather together, when we covenant to do life with God and with one another, we do that bringing ourselves and our stories. We do that asking each other to be our best versions and to be good grown-ups. So when I think about covenant, when I think about community, it isn't this sense of please get into conformity. It's an invitation to show up. Brene Brown, sociologist, social worker, psychologist, who some of you know of, in her book, Daring Greatly, references this very idea that the call to be in relationship, in community with each other, is the invitation to show up. As Teddy Roosevelt once penned, let us not be a people who sit on the sidelines, but one who enter the arena, who emerge from it at times bloodied, but we've been willing to risk ourselves. And so when we think about what it means to gather in and to community, I want us to think about this. What does it mean to show up? What might it mean for you and for me to be willing to risk ourselves, to be willing to be vulnerable, to be willing to let each other see our scars, to be willing to turn towards one another? This is the invitation to gather in and to community. What might it look like for you to covenant, to show up?
Say it's here where our pieces fall in place. Any rain softly kisses us on the face. Any wind means we're running. We can sleep and see it coming. We can drift and call it dreaming. We can weep and call it singing. Where we pray, 'cause our hearts are strong enough. We can bow, 'cause our music's warmer than blood. Where we see enough to follow, We can heal when we are hollow, where we keep the light we're given. We can lose and call it living, where the sun isn't always sinking fast. Every night knows how long it's supposed to last, where the time of our lives is all we've had, and we get the chance to say before we ease away, for all the love you left behind, have mine. Say it's here where our pieces fall in place. We can feel, 'cause the feelings find to betray. Where our water isn't hidden, we can burn and be forgiven. Where our hands hurt from healing, we can laugh without a reason. The sun isn't always sinking fast. Every moon makes our bodies shining glass. The time of our lives is all we've had, and we get the chance to say before we ease away, for all the love you left behind, you can have mine.
Welcome, beloved. Welcome, beloved. That is one of the core values of our community here at Colonial Church. It's meant to convey that everyone is welcome, period. In the fullness of who you are, you're welcome. As Sarah talked about last week in her message, everyone has a seat at the table. Everyone is welcome. Now, this is a hard-won aspiration, as I'm sure you can probably imagine, particularly for a religious community. I know when I first heard that was one of the central core values, and really, if you kind of look at all of our core values, that's sort of at the very center of it, I was a little bit skeptical, to be honest. Part of that skepticism for me was rooted in my own history, my own experience. When I was growing up as a child, I wound up having to go to 9 different schools over my 12 years, and I constantly experienced what it meant to be an outsider. I struggled to belong, to know where to find or know where I fit. And of course, not just school experiences, right? I've been in other church settings and religious settings where you're welcome if you're willing to toe a certain line, if you're willing to agree on a certain political stance or theological doctrine. So when I hear welcome, beloved, I have a deep skepticism. And I know I'm not alone. Some of the people who are closest to me in my life have experienced ostracism because of some position or other that they took that wasn't in total concord with the group that they were a part of, the religious community that they were a part of. So if there are folks who are watching today, if you are watching today and you've been watching over the last year or many weeks, and you've heard us say, welcome, beloved, and you're skeptical, I hear you. I know where you're coming from. You know, one of the things that I've learned over the year that I've been here is actually how seriously my colleagues and the people that I have been able to minister with really do take that saying, welcome, beloved. I can remember actually having a conversation with a couple of my colleagues as I was trying to figure out something. I was trying to make a decision, and they said to me essentially, when you try to figure out what it means for you to follow Jesus, you need to follow your conscience. You need to be free, and you need to feel free to follow your conscience, to be yourself. Now, as someone who, as I said, grew up never knowing if I belonged, that was like cool water on a hot day. And it really told me that though we're not perfect by any means, we really do mean that. We really are trying to be a community that welcomes others. Now, you may be aware that over these last few weeks and over the weeks that are coming up, we are going to be engaging some of the key themes and practices, and maybe we might call them hallmarks of our tradition. Our tradition is what's called the congregational tradition, or congregational church. And we've heard about being gathered around Christ and being gathered in the Spirit and being gathered at the table. Well, one of the other key hallmarks that I've discovered for myself when I was doing some reading about our tradition is the idea of a people who is bound together in freedom and fellowship. And the freedom side of that kind of dialectic, I guess we could say, of that pairing has to do with the notion of freedom of conscience. This tradition, congregationalism, was born, in a sense, as a protest. The early Congregationalists who were living in England, they didn't agree with the state church, and they didn't agree deep in their bones, and they felt that they should follow their conscience, and so they separated or they left and sought to do church in a different way. Well, that idea of freedom of conscience, right, translated into now, means that you and I are free to bring our whole selves to the table, to be ourselves, to listen to the Spirit, to discern what is it going to mean for us to follow Jesus. The other side of that pole, though, is also important, because the freedom that God gives and the freedom that our tradition cherishes and the freedom that our church and community tries to cherish is not just a freedom from being coerced or being forced or being made to stick into a box, a round peg into a square hole. It's also a freedom for, right? And what is it free for? It's for us to be free for each other, for fellowship. That's the other side of that dialectic, freedom and fellowship. Now, when Congregationalists talked about being in fellowship, being together, being knit together in a sense, like any community might want to talk about, they like to use the concept that they drew out of the Bible of the covenant. Now, covenant, obviously, if that word sounds strange to you or if it sounds old, it's because it is. It's very old. In fact, the Congregationalists took it out of the Old Testament as a way of talking about how they understood their unity. Well, to kind of boil it down without getting kind of lost in all the details, a covenant is just a way of talking about how people make promises to one another in God's presence. I mean, if you look in the Bible, you'll find a lot of examples of covenants. Military agreements can be covenants. People can make covenants about how they're going to share a certain plot of land for agricultural purposes. But some of the most intimate relationships that people have, like friendships and marriage, those are also described with the concept of covenant. And I think one of the reasons why early Congregationalists were especially drawn to this is precisely the sense of intimacy of that last notion, right? That you make a covenant to be in relationship with one another. Our covenant, the one that is the one that we recite. If you become a member, and every now and then in church we will return to this and say it again and again, is pretty old, actually. It goes back to 1629, and it's called the Salem Covenant of 1629, and it reads as follows. It says, "We covenant with the Lord and one with another, and do bind ourselves in the presence of God to walk together in all God's ways, according as God is pleased to reveal God's self unto us in God's blessed word of truth." So what is this? It's a promise. It's a promise that says that we are going to stick together. What binds us together is not where we live. It's not our backgrounds. It's not our race, our ethnicity, our gender. It's not even that we have a sort of intricate religious doctrinal statement. It's that we've made a promise. We made a promise to be in relationship with one another. As we seek God, as we seek the Spirit, as we seek Jesus. That's what it means to have a covenant. That is a huge promise. In fact, it's probably fair to say, given the world that we live in, which is so deeply divided, that to say that what sticks us together is a covenant, I'm not sure that even answers some of the skepticism we might have. But the good news is that a covenant is not just a promise that people make to one another. It's a promise that they make to one another in God's presence. And what that means is that we are not alone in being together. It's not we pull up our bootstraps and we just forge ahead, being one with one another on our own steam. No, it's God who works in us, drawing us and knitting us together. One of the passages that I was drawn to as I was thinking about this message today and this idea of faith and freedom and fellowship comes out of 1 Peter, and it reads, "Come to Christ, a living stone, rejected by mortals, but approved nonetheless, chosen and precious in God's eyes. And you are living stones as well. You are being built as an edifice of spirit to become a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices to God through Jesus Christ. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a consecrated nation, a people set apart, to sing the praises of the one who called you out of the darkness into the wonderful divine life." Now that passage there is addressed to the church. I mean, this is some pretty amazing language that's being used for this small community to whom Peter's writing, that they're going to be a chosen people, that they're a royal priesthood, right? It's rather remarkable, frankly. But the most, I think, remarkable thing, or the key thing in that passage that to me seems to shed light on what we've been talking about, is that it's God who's the primary actor. God is the one who's building them together. God is the one who's gathered them. God is the one who's knitting them together. God is the one who's going to keep the covenant. We're going to fail. I'm going to fail. You're going to fail. We're not always going to keep our promise. But that doesn't mean that there's not a God who will pick us back up, embrace us, dust us off, and send us together on the journey that we've been called into. So my prayer for you and for us is that we will continue to grow into a community that truly is welcoming of all. God bless you.
As we go into the week and reflect on this idea of commitment, there's a lot of people and groups of people we've made commitments to. I think about my wedding vows and committing to my spouse, Maureen, to be a sanctuary of peace, to seek the best in her, to build towards love and kindness. I think about the staff we have here at church and the leadership team. We worked on a staff covenant to one another and how we promised to address problems directly and appropriately, to really embrace our diversity of opinion and perspective, and to speak well of each other whenever we can. And this church community as a whole, we have our covenant, right? Anyone who becomes a member adopts this covenant to walk alongside one another, to live out agape love, to share burdens, to pray for each other in need, right? To work together to bringing the kingdom. So as you think about all those commitments you've made, whether to people in your family, friends, work, your church community, your neighbors, where do you need to lean in? Where do you need to recalibrate? Where do you need to assess how well you've been living up to that commitment, those promises? And this isn't an exercise to shame ourselves. This is an exercise to make sure we're living out our lives in the ways that we want to, with the people that we care about. So this week, let's lean into our commitments.
All right, this next song is called Sun, and it's by Sleeping at Last. The very first line in this song is, "With golden string, our universe was clothed in light." And it sets the tone of this piece by piece, clothing our universe in intentionality. Everything was on purpose. And then it goes on to say that we may fall in love every time we open up our eyes. And that doesn't just happen automatically. We have to choose to do that every time we open our eyes. We have to choose to fall in love with this earth that is around us, with the people that surround us. It is a conscious choice to be in that space. So I'm going to invite you right now to be in that space with us as we sing this song.
Golden string, our universe was clothed in light. Pulling at the seas, our once barren world now brims with life. That we may fall in love I gave space and time. Takes violent things, angry things, and makes them cry. We are the dust of death. We're the apple of God's eye. We are infinite as the universe we hold inside. Infinity times infinity. Infinity times infinity times infinity. Infinity times infinity times infinity times infinity. Let there be light, let there be light, let me be right. We are the dust of death. We're the apple of God's eye. We are infinite as the universe we hold inside. We are the dust of death. We're the apple of God's eye. We are infinite as the universe we hold inside. Golden stream, our universe was brought to life, and we may fall in love every time we open up our eyes.
Well, we're glad that you are with us today as we have been continuing our theme of gathered in community. We're thankful for Christian who's reminded us that we are a covenant people, that we gather in and through commitment to one another. We'd like for you to experience more of the community by being involved with a variety of other things that are happening in life of this church. Go to our website. That outlines all the things that are happening throughout the week and the things that are coming up missionally, Bible studies, all kinds of things. Find ways to be even more involved in this community. Following this service, we want you to stay tuned because the Blessing Initiative, many of you know that a couple of years ago, we voted to set aside $1 million from our foundation to inspire our congregation of ways that we can better serve the community and the world. Because we are called to grow in Christ and serve the world. And that Blessing Initiative Committee has done a great job of looking at proposals, looking at ideas, and now they have some exciting things to share with us of what that has become. So stay tuned, be a part of that. And as you do that, pray that God would inspire you to ways that you might already think of being involved with how God's leading us through this blessing initiative. Then I want you to stay tuned and be a part of Christian Winn's class on congregationalism. It's a few weeks in, but I think you can catch up and you can learn about our history and what it means for us to be of the heritage of congregationalism. He's doing a great job, and we want you to be a part of it. We also would encourage you as a part of this community that you might not only share your gifts and abilities and talents, but your financial resources that will help us to continue to do this good work. Part of being in community is us sharing together for the better good of the work that God's calling us to. So you can give online, you can do it by your cell phone, you can send us a check. There's lots of ways to do that. So we encourage you to invest in the life of this church as you are able. As many of you know, we have been in the process of listening and discerning the Spirit in regards to this idea of changing the name of our church. Some of you might remember that during my candidating for the position of senior minister, I shared a vision in that I believed that God was doing a new thing. And so we began pursuing this vision of God doing anything, trying to listen well to what God wanted us to be a part of and how God wanted to lead us. It became clear to the staff and lay leaders that one of the hurdles to us pursuing this new thing was our name. And so over the last 6 months, we've offered town hall meetings, we've offered a position paper and several listening sessions and many, many, many conversations with individuals throughout our congregation. Well, through that process, as some of you may know, the results of the Congregational Vote is now in. And the proposal to change our name did not meet the 2/3 or 67% threshold. The vote was 61.5% of members in favor of name change and 38.5% against. Well, we recognize the disappointment that this is for so many of you. Many members of council, staff, lay leadership, and fellow congregants are feeling some form of sadness and discouragement, wondering what this means about our vision going forward. Elected leadership and staff were unanimous in favor of this proposal as a way to look towards the future. As a congregational church, we are going to abide by our polity and not move forward at this time with the next steps of choosing a new name. But through this process, we have learned that it is a matter of great importance to our community, of how we relate to each other and how we relate to the world around us. We believe that this is a conversation that needs to continue, since listening to the Spirit is an ongoing process. But recognizing the diversity of perspectives in our own congregation, we've been led to put together an idea, a plan for leading well going forward. So we'll be putting together a survey, followed by some town hall meetings for the congregation, so that we can find ways to improve our process and best lead as we believe God is showing a vision for the future. This survey, these town hall meetings will help us discern if the no to name change was due to process, not being together, or timing, or maybe just an actual no in changing the name of our church. In all this, one thing that the whole staff and leadership want you to know is that we love you, we care for you and the future of this church, and we are committed to following Jesus and serving the world. Bless your week to come. Hi, Jeff Lindsay, Senior Minister. I want to update you about what's happening with the Blessing Initiative. You know, the Blessing Initiative, where $1 million was set aside to empower some of our own congregational members' ideas that they had about doing good for Christ's sake. $1 million set aside. How did all that start? Maybe you can't quite remember. You know that this is happening and you probably have been praying about it, but how did that start? Well, 2 years ago, we embarked on a process of reformation. We went through a process of reforming who we were, and out of that reforming process came 5 core values. We gathered the congregation together and we said, hey, this is what we believe are the core values going forward. If that's so, what should we be doing with those? How can we best represent them in our life as a church? And you gave us some great feedback, some great ideas. And one of the things you said is, let's do something good with that money that's in our foundation. Let's do good for Christ's sake. And that launched a group of lay people who have literally spent months and months and months, hours and hours and hours, gifted, accomplished, generous people who have helped us put together a process, develop a list of candidates, figuring out how we can whittle that down to those initiatives and those blessings that will help us move forward missionally in the life of this church. You're going to find out who those people are, those ministries are, and then I hope that you will prayerfully consider how you will invest your time and energy, how you'll get involved in helping us to further the work of this church and to do good for Christ's sake. So bless you as you think about that, pray for that as we go forward as a church.
Hi, Colonial Church. Sarah asked me to talk a little bit about what the vision and dream was for the Blessing Initiative when we originally decided to do it. And it was after reforming, and we were looking for an idea to engage and energize the congregation. And we knew that Innovate had done that, and we wanted to give away some of the money from the waters. So we decided to use a similar structure to Innovate, but what we wanted was one that wasn't necessarily for outside social entrepreneurial ideas, but for congregational members to share their passions with the church. So we developed a similar process to that of Innovate, only we had champions and people who were passionate about their ideas within Colonial. And we wanted those organic ideas to come up and then decide on which ones we felt hit the 5 core values and which ones would engage the church. And we've done that. We're at the final point where we're going to unveil them here, and we are just really excited. We had some really great ideas, and we feel like that we really whittled it down to things that will engage the church, which is what we wanted in the first place, was high engagement in these passions of Colonial. And we wanted them to be things that Colonial was about, and I think we did that. So I hope you'll be as excited as we are, and we'll get engaged in these ideas. Thanks.
After having spent months dreaming and planning and praying, the Blessing Initiative was ready to launch, and then COVID hit. All of a sudden, everybody was on lockdown. You remember what it was like last spring, trying to figure out how to work and go to school remotely, wondering if we needed to disinfect our groceries, downloading something called Zoom. It became clear that just living our lives was going to take everything we had. It became clear that people simply were not going to have the bandwidth to be able to complete Blessing Initiative applications. So, reluctantly, we postponed. With a new timeline, applications opened in mid-September, shortly after Kickoff Sunday. COVID also changed the way that we communicated with you about the Blessing Initiative. So many of the ways that our community has traditionally shared news simply were not available. There was no bulletin to put an announcement in, no in-person information sessions or meetings about an idea. You couldn't even share your excitement over coffee and a bagel in the common. So we used what was available, a combination of old school and new. We mailed you a brochure last fall, and Jeff became a remarkably realistic and surprisingly funny Jay Leno in a kickoff video.
Welcome to The Tonight Show. Here's your host, Jay Leno.
We put information on the website and in the e-news and answered questions by phone and email. Even now, our plan was to host a big community event to celebrate these amazing ministries. Instead, you'll soon receive a packet in the mail about these blessings that we hope will excite and inspire you, as well as a ballot members can use to approve and affirm them and give a bonus to their favorite. Next month, you'll receive information about the larger initiatives for your approval and affirmation.
Hello, everyone. As you all know, through the winter months, the Blessing Initiative team has been developing a process that we plan to unveil this spring. At the beginning of March, the health and economic crisis our nation and the world faced was becoming more intense. And by the final week of March, unemployment claims had reached 3.3 million. I went to our weekly meeting carrying a deep burden of sorrow for all the suffering in our community. I felt a strong call to do something. It was clear to me that our team needed to respond, but I wasn't sure how. I decided to see what the temperature in our group was before saying anything. We started with a time of checking in for each of us. When it was my turn, I felt that sense of call once again, and I spoke out. I told everyone about the sorrow I was carrying. The world was different now. We couldn't continue to move forward as if nothing had changed. We needed to act with more urgency and boldness. We are a blessed people. We have so much to give. We could do something, although I didn't know exactly what. It turned out that everyone else was feeling the same need. So we discussed the difficulty people might have applying for grants in this time. We also talked about the initiative from the Ministry Action Team for Missions and the staff to dedicate $100,000 for immediate needs in our community. And then the idea came. Why not double that amount and give an additional $200,000 to these same ministry partners? We took this idea to Paul Bertelson and his team and asked if they thought these same organizations had the capacity to accept a larger gift. Paul talked with each one of them, and he came back with a beautiful proposal. This was exactly what I had imagined.
Hi everyone, this is Wendy Sr. I'm spending some time with you today just reflecting on the moments of the Blessings Initiatives. And we had so many great ideas to be doing it face to face. And we had so many great plans, and then COVID and the restrictions that we were under, we had to change course. So we came to you with our first moment where we taped the late night with Jay Leno, and Jeff Lindsay was our star. And it was so much fun putting that together. But what was more fun was at Kickoff Sunday, shortly thereafter. So many of you watched it and said it was fun and you had questions, and so we felt like we reached you even though we weren't face to face. And here we are, it's moment number 2. And this is where we're unveiling our blessings. And here we are, it's moment number 2. And this is where you are going to be learning more about our blessings, and you'll be getting information in the mail. Our third moment is February 21st, and that's where we will unveil all of the initiatives. But the fourth moment is going to be the best, and that's when we're going to be all together here in person, and we're going to have a celebration about everything of Blessings Initiatives, everything about this community, and everything about this church. And that is the one I can't wait for the most, so I can't wait to see you then.
I'm Steve Anderson. I was the leader of the screener team. The screeners were the first wave of review after the applications came in. Our idea was to have as many different looks at the applications to then reach a consensus. So after the applications closed, the screener group, which included me plus 10 others, looked at the documents submitted. We had required significantly detailed applications, so the 11 of us individually, and by that I mean separately, reviewed them and ranked them according to some criteria we had agreed upon previously. So we had agreed on written criteria. We had 3 broad categories: a compelling idea, church fit or engaging the church, and then feasibility. Is this something that could be done? So each person individually ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, and then came up with an ultimate number for his or her review. Then when we were all done, the program averaged the scores of all the screeners and then gave each application 1 number. We then, of course, ranked the projects according to those numbers. And as it turned out, there was a logical gap after the top 9 and then the following 20. So we decided 9 would be the appropriate number to send on to the next step. We hadn't been given any instructions. We just thought, all of us collectively thought, this was a good group. So then we passed it on to the researchers, and our work was essentially done. And the researchers engaged in in-depth consideration that really wasn't possible for us to do using another set of eyes. So that's where we ended up, and that was how we started the process.
Hello, I'm Jason Phillips. I was part of the researcher team for the Blessing Initiative. It was our task to take the pool of finalists that were put together by the screening team and do a really deep dive and do due diligence on each of those potential partners to really evaluate their fit with our congregation, the feasibility of the projects they were putting forward, and most importantly, the ways for us to engage with them on an ongoing basis as partners. And so our team was able to get to know each of these organizations. We had detailed applications and plans that they put together with budgets and timelines. But most importantly, we got to hear from the colonial members that were sponsoring these organizations. And then we got to talk to the people, the leadership of the organizations as well, to really understand their passions and their plans and their vision for making us a part of the work that they're doing. And we are so excited to share them with you. What you'll find with each of these organizations, they are all doing different things in our community, but they're all really good things. And most importantly, they're doing really good things for people that need it a lot, particularly now during COVID. And so what you'll see is that these folks have hearts for Jesus, and there's just good work that we can partner with. I think you're going to be really proud of them. Some of them you know and will have seen around as mission partners in the past, and some are going to be brand new. But all of them are doing good work that we can be proud of, and work that we want to be part of, and that will engage the world around us and outside of our doors. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Therese Reiling, and I'm here to talk about Moment 2 of the Blessing Initiative process. And I've been involved in this and have had the privilege of being involved in this since it started almost 2 years ago. And I just wanted to let you know that already we've had over 75 members of our church have an opportunity to participate and contribute their skills and time to this process over hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I'm super excited to let you know today that you're going to be receiving sometime in our mail this week, information on moment 2 of the process. And that's where, out of the 9 candidates who rose to the top through our vetting process, 5 of them are going to be highlighted in the information that you get this week. So take a look at that and see which one out of the 5 you think, after you read through all the information, would be worth getting an extra bonus, which is $5,000 extra towards their specific initiative. So check your mail this week. Make sure you look for what's coming from Colonial Church on the Blessing Initiative, and take time to let us know who you think should be the special recipient of this extra money. Thanks so much for your participation.
Hi everybody, my name's John Seberg. I'm your moderator. You know, on this whole Blessing Initiative, Council's role has really been to stay in touch with what that great team has been doing. We've been fortunate to have a few different council members who have been part of that team. So it's not been a stranger to us, but our ultimate role has been to approve and affirm the outcomes of that team, the process and the outcomes. I'm delighted to say that we've now done that. We have approved and affirmed both the process that they used as well as the slate of awardees that came out of that process. And you know, those words really don't do justice to it. We are so proud of that team and so grateful to that team for not just all the hours, which were many, going back over 2 years, but also for the skill sets that they brought, the heart that they brought, and they totally embraced the goal of not only doing good for Christ's sake, but creating pathways of engagement for every one of us in the congregation in one way, shape, or form for those awardees. So we're delighted. Can't wait for you to see the rollout on it. And once again, I want to thank the team very much.
Hi, I'm David Engelbert, a member at Colonial. We are so excited to culminate this long process of the Blessing Initiatives with really exciting news. Watch your mailboxes. Next week, you'll be receiving the blessings, which are so important, and these are going to be fantastic additions to these organizations. And then next month, we've got the big initiatives coming, so get ready for that. Thank you for being a part of this, and we really look forward to you supporting and helping us in these endeavors. Thank you.